Unauthorized or inadequately tested changes to information systems are one of the most common causes of security incidents and operational disruptions. ISO 27001, 2022 Control A.8.32 requires organizations to manage changes to information systems through a formal change management process that includes security assessment, approval, and rollback planning. In this video, we explore the key components of a change management process, the different change types and how they are handled, the role of the Change Advisory Board, and how emergency changes are controlled. Let us begin by understanding what A.8.32 requires of a change management process and why a formal process is necessary as an information security control. Control A.8.32 requires a formal change management process that assesses the security implications of changes, requires appropriate approval before implementation, and ensures changes are tested and reversible before they reach production systems. The fundamental purpose of change management as a security control is to prevent changes from being made to production systems without security assessment and appropriate approval. Changes that bypass this process, whether through urgency, convenience, or lack of process awareness, represent one of the most significant vectors for both accidental and deliberate security incidents. The control ensures that every change to a production system has been reviewed, approved, tested, and documented before implementation. The change management lifecycle moves a change from initial request through security and impact assessment, approval by the appropriate authority, testing in a non-production environment, controlled implementation in production, and post-implementation review to verify the change achieved its intended outcome without adverse effects. Each stage produces documentation that creates an audit trail showing that the change was properly controlled. Skipping stages, even under pressure, must be explicitly managed through the emergency change process rather than simply bypassed. Change classification determines the appropriate approval path and controls for each change. Standard changes are pre-approved routine changes with well-understood risk profiles and documented implementation procedures. Normal changes follow the full assessment and approval process through the Change Advisory Board or defined approval authority. Emergency changes are expedited when immediate action is required to address a security incident or critical failure. They bypass the normal approval timeline, but must still be documented and reviewed retrospectively. The classification system calibrates control rigor to the risk profile of the change. Rollback planning is a mandatory element of change management that is often neglected in practice. Every change to a production system should have a documented rollback procedure that defines how the system will be returned to its previous state if the change causes unexpected problems. The rollback procedure should be tested in the test environment before the change is made in production, and the time required for rollback should be understood and communicated to stakeholders who depend on the affected system. 4 essential concepts that define how change management is structured and governed under A.8.32. The Change Advisory Board provides a structured, multi-stakeholder review of proposed changes before they are approved for production implementation. CAB members typically include representatives from IT operations, information security, business stakeholders, and application owners, providing diverse perspectives on the potential impact of each change. CAB meetings create a formal record of the approval process, including the assessment criteria applied, the risks considered, and the conditions attached to the approval. For ISO 27001 auditors, CAB records are primary evidence that change management is operating as a real governance process rather than a formality. The change record is the complete documentary history of a single change through the change management lifecycle. A well-maintained change record demonstrates that every stage of the process was completed. The change was requested with sufficient information, risk assessed against defined criteria, approved by the appropriate authority, tested before production implementation, implemented according to the approved plan, and reviewed after implementation. Change records are both the audit evidence for ISO 27001 and the organizational memory that enables post-incident analysis when changes cause problems. Emergency changes are the highest risk category in change management because the urgency that justifies expedited handling also creates pressure to skip controls that exist for good reason. Effective emergency change management requires a defined emergency approval path, typically a single senior approver rather than a full CAB, that provides oversight without the delay of a normal approval cycle. Every emergency change must be logged at the time it is made and subjected to retrospective CAB review as soon as practicable. Patterns of frequent emergency changes may indicate that the normal change process is too slow for operational needs and requires redesign. The post-implementation review closes the change management lifecycle by verifying the actual outcome of the change against the intended outcome. It should confirm that the change achieved its stated objective, that no unintended effects on system security or performance have been observed, that monitoring data from the post-implementation period shows normal system behavior, and that the change record has been updated with the review outcome. Reviews that identify problems should trigger the change management process for corrective action rather than ad hoc fixes. Now let us explore how security assessment, emergency change controls, and change record documentation work together to make change management an effective information security control. Making change management work as an information security control requires security assessment to be integrated into the approval process, emergency changes to be subject to enhanced controls despite reduced lead time, and change records to provide a complete, auditable history of every production change. Security impact assessment should be a structured, mandatory element of every change request, not an optional consideration. The assessment should evaluate whether the change modifies access controls, changes network topology, introduces new software or dependencies, affects cryptographic configurations, or modifies audit logging. Changes with significant security implications should require information security sign-off as a condition of CAB approval. The assessment criteria and the outcome for each change should be documented in the change record. Emergency changes require enhanced controls precisely because the urgency that justifies bypassing normal approval timelines also increases the risk of inadequate assessment. Every emergency change should be logged at the time it is made, including what was changed, by whom, at what time, and under whose verbal or emergency approval. The retrospective CAB review should evaluate whether the change was genuinely urgent, whether the implemented change was appropriate, and whether any security risks were introduced that require remediation. Retrospective reviews that identify avoidable emergency changes should feed back into the service improvement process. Change records are the primary evidence that the change management process is functioning as a real control rather than a bureaucratic formality. Auditors will examine change records for completeness, checking that every field is populated with meaningful information, not placeholders, and for consistency, verifying that the approval dates, implementation dates, and reviewer signatures reflect a genuine process that happened in the documented sequence. Change records should be retained for a period consistent with the organization's retention policy and the requirements of applicable regulations. Analyzing change management data over time reveals patterns that individual change assessment cannot detect. High rates of emergency changes may indicate that the standard process is too slow for operational needs. Recurring failed changes in particular system areas may indicate technical debt or inadequate testing. Changes that consistently require rollback may indicate testing environment inadequacies. These insights support the continuous improvement mandate of ISO 27001 and help the organization address systemic weaknesses in its change management and system quality practices. Let us summarize the essential points from our exploration of Control A.8.32. To master all 93 ISO 27001, 2022 Annex A controls and develop the expertise to implement and audit them in your organization, enroll in our complete Udemy course. We provide step-by-step implementation guidance, real-world examples, and the evidence frameworks you need for certification. Enroll today. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe for more ISO 27001 control explanations. See you in the next video.